I thought the worst thing that could happen was losing a neighbor's trust. I was wrong. One morning, I left my farm standing and came back to smoke swallowing the sky, animals screaming, and everything I'd built reduced to ash. All because of a lie wrapped in power, privilege, and quiet hatred that never needed to say its name out loud. This wasn't just about a fire or a dog or a woman named Karen. It was about who gets believed, who gets blamed, and who's allowed to burn without consequence. And what I discovered next changed everything I thought I knew about justice. But the warning signs were there long before the flames ever touched the ground. Before everything burned, my life was quiet in a way most people never notice until it's gone. I worked the land every day, long hours under open sky, raising livestock, fixing fences, and keeping to myself. The farm wasn't just property. It was history, survival, and proof that I belonged somewhere that never expected me to. I didn't bother anyone, didn't attend HOA meetings, didn't ask for favors. I paid my taxes, followed the rules, and stayed invisible on purpose, because I had learned early that standing out came at a cost. Karen noticed anyway. She always did. She ran the HOA like it was a private kingdom, measuring worth by obedience and familiarity. I was neither. To her, my farm was an inconvenience, my independence an insult. I felt in the way her eyes lingered, in the inspections that always seemed to stop at my fence, in the unspoken judgment that followed me whenever paperwork came up. Still, I focused on my animals, my routine, my dog who guarded the barn and trusted the world because I told him it was safe. The day her cat was attacked, something shifted. What could have been handled with accountability, and calm became something heavier, quieter, and far more dangerous. I apologized, took responsibility, and tried to do the right thing, believing reason still mattered. On the surface, Karen softened. Beneath it, resentment fermented. The calm felt wrong, like a pause before impact. I went back to my routines, unaware that patience had been mistaken for weakness and silence for permission. I didn't know that someone had already decided my place, my life, and my losses were acceptable collateral. And that false sense of peace would lead straight into a nightmare I never saw coming. After the incident with Karen's cat, the farm stopped feeling like a refuge and started feeling like a stage where something unseen was being rehearsed. The air changed first. It wasn't loud or obvious. It was a quiet kind of pressure that settles into your chest when you realize you're being watched. Karen didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She did something far more unsettling. She smiled. The fine stopped. The emails vanished. For the first time since I'd moved there, the HOA went silent, and that silence carried more weight than all the warnings before it. I tried to do everything right. I reinforced my dog's enclosure, limiting his movement, even though it felt like punishing loyalty. I paid for repairs I didn't owe. I documented everything, dates, times, faces lingering too long at my fence. I knew how stories like mine usually ended, especially when someone like me stood alone against someone like her. Around here, authority didn't need to raise its voice. It only needed a point. Kara began showing up in small, calculated ways. She left cookies on my porch, untouched and unwanted. She complimented my fences with a tone that felt rehearsed. She asked questions that didn't fit casual concern about fuel storage, water access generators, response times. Each one landed wrong, like a puzzle piece from a picture I didn't want to see. When I laughed it off, she watched closely, as if measuring how much I understood and how much I didn't. Then came the coincidences. An HOA surveyor wandered onto my land without permission, claiming confusion about boundaries that had been clear for years. Someone loosened the latch on my fuel shed. A camera angle shifted just enough to create a blind spot. Every time I reported it, the response was polite and hollow. No urgency, no follow-up, just enough acknowledgement to say it had been heard, not enough to say it mattered. Neighbors started acting differently, too. Conversations stopped when I approached. Doors closed faster. Warnings came in whispers, half-finished sentences about Karen's influence, about how complaints from people like me tended to disappear. I recognized the pattern. When trouble comes wrapped in respectability, it doesn't need proof. It only needs permission. The calm stretched on for days, then weeks. I convinced myself vigilance was enough. That preparation could outrun intent. I checked locks nightly, reviewed footage, called my insurance provider, and told myself fear was a luxury I couldn't afford. Still, something kept tightening, a sense that I was already inside a plan I didn't design. The morning it happened started like any other. Routine. Predictable. I left early to pick up supplies, trusting that normalcy could protect what I loved. Halfway back, I saw the smoke. Thick, black, clawing upward where my land should have been green. My heart dropped before my mind caught up. Tires screamed against pavement as I turned back, dialing emergency services with shaking hands. Shouting coordinates through a throat already tight with dread. By the time I reached the gate, chaos had taken over. Flames tore through the barn. Livestock ran in blind terror, some collapsing, some burning. Heat punched the air from my lungs. I ran toward the noise, coughing, throwing dirt and water, knowing it was enough but unable to stop. Then I saw her. Karen stood near the fuel shed, holding a petrol can, her expression calm, almost satisfied. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She watched. Something inside me broke loose. I moved forward until another sound cut through everything. The howl of my dog. His cage was engulfed, metal glowing, fire wrapping around loyalty that never questioned me. I tried to reach him, hands blistering, vision failing. But the smoke won. The sound stopped. Silence rushed in where trust had lived. Sirens came too late. Firefighters fought what they could. Cameras blinked quietly from their mounts, recording what flames couldn't erase. Karen disappeared into confusion, leaving ash, bodies, and a hollowed-out life behind. And as the smoke settled, I realized this wasn't the end of her power trip. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The fire didn't end when the flames went out. That was when the real damage surfaced. Standing in the ruins, such streaked across my skin, I felt the full weight of what had been taken. Not just animals, not just a livelihood, but the quiet belief that doing everything right could still protect you. Investigators moved through the wreckage, measuring ash, photographing bones, tagging what little remained. I watched from a distance, numb, while Karen's name hovered in the air without being spoken, heavy and unavoidable. Then the footage surfaced. My security system had kept running, unaffected by smoke or heat, recording every step with cold precision. Frame by frame, the truth unfolded. Karen entering my land. Karen spreading fuel. Karen igniting the fire at multiple points. No panic, no hesitation, just certainty. The same certainty she'd always carried when she decided rules applied to everyone else differently than they did to her. When authorities saw it, the room changed. Doubt evaporated. What felt like my word against her suddenly became undeniable fact. As charges stacked up, the scale of the injustice sharpened. Aggravated arson, felony animal cruelty, destruction of agricultural property, reckless endangerment. Each count read aloud like a tally of everything I'd lost. Karen's confidence finally cracked when the judge denied bail, eyes fixed on the screen she believed flames had erased. In that moment, power shifted. Not loudly, not theatrically, but permanently. The HOA unraveled next. Subpoenas exposed negligence, favoritism, and the quiet ways authority had shielded her behavior. The board dissolved. Insurance vanished. Neighbors who once avoided my gaze now stood watching, realizing how close they'd come to the same fate. It became clear this was never just about a dog or a cat. It was about who was seen as expendable, whose losses were acceptable, and how easily harm hides behind respectability. Karen was led away. The silence felt different this time. Not threatening, not heavy, just final. But justice on paper doesn't rebuild what fire erased, and the hardest part was still ahead. The fire didn't end when the flames went out. That was when the damage truly surfaced. I stood in the ruins, ash clinging to my skin, watching investigators move through what was left of my life. Charred beams, silent fields, the absence of sound where animals once moved and breathed. In that stillness, the weight hit me all at once. Not just loss, but the realization that doing everything right had never guaranteed safety, especially for someone like me. Then the footage came forward. My cameras had never stopped recording. Through smoke and heat, they captured every detail with unforgiving clarity. Karen entering my land. Karen carrying fuel. Karen setting fire in more than one place. No fear. No rush. Just the same confidence she'd always worn when she decided consequences were for other people. When authorities watched it back, the atmosphere shifted. Suspicion turned into certainty. The story stopped being about what I could prove and became about what she couldn't deny. Charges stacked quickly, each one heavier than the last. Aggravated arson, felony animal cruelty, destruction of agricultural property, reckless endangerment. As they were read aloud, it felt like hearing my losses translated into legal language, sterile and precise. Karen sat silent as bail was denied. Her power evaporated the moment the judge looked at the screen she believed fire had erased. For the first time, her status meant nothing. The fallout spread. Subpoenas ripped through the HOA, exposing favoritism, ignored complaints, and a system that had protected her long before the fire. The board collapsed. Insurance withdrew. Neighbors who once looked away now stood watching, realizing how easily it could have been them. This was never about animals alone. It was about whose pain gets minimized, whose warnings get ignored, and how racism hides behind authority until it burns everything in its path. As Karen was led away, there was no satisfaction, only a hollow calm. Justice had finally spoken, but it hadn't restored what I lost. And as the camera stopped rolling, I understood something chilling. Accountability was just the beginning, not the end. The farm didn't come back all at once. Healing never does. It returned in pieces, new fences rising where ash once settled, quiet mornings where noise used to live, empty spaces that would never be filled again. I rebuilt because stopping would have meant letting the fire decide the ending. The land still held scars, and so did I. Some nights, the smell of smoke returned without warning. Some mornings, the silence felt heavier than the flames ever were. But I stayed. Staying mattered. Karen's conviction closed one chapter, but it opened something larger. People finally spoke. Neighbors admitted what they'd ignored. Others shared stories of intimidation, fines, and quiet threats they'd swallowed for years. What happened to me forced a mirror in front of a system that had long protected certain people while dismissing others. The fire made visible what bias it kept hidden, how authority listens differently depending on who's speaking, how harm escalates when accountability is delayed, and how racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles, signs paperwork, and walks away while everything burns. I didn't get justice in the way movies promise. No moment erased the losses. No sentence restored trust. But the truth stood, recorded and undeniable. And that mattered more than revenge. It meant my pain wasn't rewritten, minimized, or buried under excuses. It meant the story stayed whole. This wasn't just about a farm or an HOA or one woman's cruelty. It was about how quickly someone's life can be destroyed when prejudice meets power, and how often society looks away until it's too late. Stories like mine don't end when the cameras stop. They live on in courtrooms, in neighborhoods, in the choices people make when they see injustice and decide whether to act. So the question isn't whether Karen got what she deserved. The real question is how many fires it takes before we stop pretending this is rare and start refusing to let it happen again.